in the Noongar lands of southwestern Australia long before football. The 14 families of Noongar gathered together to celebrate their warriors' skills, strength, speed and bravery. In modern times, struggling to survive white settlement, the Noongar warriors rose once more, using their ancient skills to create Noongar Footy Magic.
Only one person ever changed the way the game's played.
This guy, when he played, he made the limelight.
He was able to grab the ball mid-air and handball at the same time.
Apart from being a great footballer, he's a psychologist in the way he coached. He just changed football forever.
Made you feel really good that someone like that was showing the way.
People say you can be anything you want to in life as long as you put your mind to it. He is someone who came almost from nothing and become the greatest player that's ever played our game.
I always had secret ambitions long before I went to play league football.
I wanted to play for the state, I wanted to play in a Premiership side. I wanted to eventually play in Victoria.
Graham Polly Farmer played league football for 18 years, from 1953 to 1971. He had also coached 3 teams in 10 years, and in his stellar career, won just about everything there was to win in footy. Today, Polly is very frail and in his 80s. But with the help of those who knew him best, using fragments of interviews and old footage, we can tell his story. It's one of extraordinary determination and achievements against all odds. Polly was the child of Noongar woman Eva Ross. It was 1935 and he was born in Fremantle in the middle of the Great Depression.
We have a beautiful photo of this very attractive woman sitting on a log with a very happy boy. I don't know what happened, but at age 18 months, he was placed in Sister Kate's home.
Young Graham would live here for 15 years, cocooned in an institution determined to assimilating into a European way of life. For most Aboriginal kids taken from their family and placed here, it was a terrible experience. But he didn't see it that way.
Dad was very consistent that Sister Kate's was good for him. I found that quite amazing to believe.
Sister Kate gave all the young part Aboriginal children a chance to be educated, which gave them a chance to be competitors in today's world.
They were bringing up the children to believe that they were white. The problem was, as soon as they stepped outside the grounds, no one else actually thought of that.
1942 was a pivotal time for young Graham. With war raging, he was sent to the country town of Greenbushes. Here he found space and freedom, and kicking a footy soon became a lifelong habit. Another thing that stuck with him from this time, his nickname, Polly.
So I was probably 6 or 7 years of age. Boys and girls started calling me Polly the Parrot. They said that I chatted too much. Most people today wouldn't think that would be right, but in those days it may have been right, and it just stuck.
Then, Polly began wearing a hand-me-down shoe on his left foot to help him kick. Soon, he noticed that his right leg was getting longer than his left.
Because I was wearing one shoe and I wore that over a long enough period that might have been responsible for it.
This limp became quite noticeable, a handicap for some.
As a kid, I always remember one thing, he used to limp. And to me, how could you play footy when you limped?
Like many children caught in state care at that time, Polly was being trained as a farm worker. But all he wanted to do was kick the skin off a footy. By 1951, the young footballer was being noticed. A group of businessmen wanted him for the East Perth Football Club. Luckily, they found him a good apprenticeship. Polly was to be paid the princely sum of £1.14 6 a week.
I worked at Winterbottoms. On training nights, I'd nick off at 4:45 and run to training. It was just a joy to turn up at training.
It's all I wanted to do.
In footy, Polly had found the family he'd never had. And his massive left-foot torpedo punts had become the talk of the town.
I used to read that he used to kick a 60-metre drop kick barefoot. You know, that's what we tried to do. I mean, oval bare feet trying to kick 60-metre drop kicks, but they'd probably go 20 metres.
Although there had been some players that had paved the way to allow Dad to break into football, it really wasn't the norm.
They were very difficult times because, as you know, Aboriginals were not considered good enough to have a vote. They lived on the outskirts of the town and there really wasn't many opportunities.
This area, less than a kilometre from where Polly trained, was known in the 1950s as the East Perth slums. And there was a curfew on all Aboriginals that had to be off the streets and down here by sundown. All those, that is, who weren't training for a footy club.
So the Aboriginal people had to leave by 6 p.m. while he's running around the oval and they're going, you know, encouraging him to get better and better. The irony is it's shocking, really.
For Polly, all his attention was absorbed by football. After only 6 games, he was promoted from the reserves. His star was on the rise. But at just 65 kilos, he was still a skinny kid.
In those days, the gym and things like that were your own responsibility. I noticed how high jumpers and long jumpers improved their ability to run fast with very heavy weights.
To increase his strength and speed, Polly created his own weights regime and developed a unique rucking style suited to his light frame. Instead of running up against bigger players, he was using them to get the sit.
He had a spring that taught himself to jump a little early.
You jump first, someone's behind you, you land on them and they keep taking you up in the air as they jump. And they hold you up there or they kick you a little bit higher.
So he was really in the air when he received the ball and then distribute the handball 10, 20 metres, maybe more at times.
Farmer cleans through, takes the ball, hand passes, they're able to...
When he faced opposite a ruckman at the centre bounds, he made sure his presence was felt.
You line their body right up and they're going to get it in the chest, stomach, and balls and so on. I wanted them to look at me, not at the ball.
In goes Graham Farmer.
This guy could take the ball out of the air, mark, kick goals.
Graham Farmer is the torpedo punch. Have a look at it, right through the middle again.
He didn't chase the limelight, but when he played, he made the limelight. He was just a great ball player. And I thought, if he's doing that in black and blue, that's my club, my dad's club. Well, we're with him. We're going to war with him if we have to. Going to the games was a ritual. Mum came, but she mainly came in those days to bring the sandwiches. At the end of the game, I was allowed to get out of the grandstand seat, jump the fence and run to Polly. I reckon I covered a few kilometres in my early days as a kid, running to him with my autograph book. Can you share some of your glory with me?
Not only masterminding play from the centre, Polly was also breaking new ground, preparing mentally for a game.
When I went out in the field, I was on another planet or on another wavelength. My concentration was very intense. No matter what people could do to me, they weren't going to put me off. It used to amaze me watching the Indians when they had a war dance to get themselves into the frame of mind before they went out to kill. It's one of my greatest inspirations, a little boy getting belted by the bully. Gets up again, gets knocked down again. Bully runs out of big punches, he gets on top of him and overpowers him.
That intense tunnel vision that he had, he was able to blinker out anything negative going on around him.
Polly needed that skill. As a rising Indigenous star, Polly copped more than his fair share of abuse on the field. In the 50s and 60s, it was considered acceptable to racially abuse Aboriginal footballers.
A lot of his opponents were jealous of him and they tried every trick in the trade. The names they used to call us were something terrible. I mean, you just stand there, bang, next minute you go, he's taking a mark and kicked a goal. He just looks at the bloke, points at him, don't say nothing.
But I then hear from other people and himself, something might happen to the other opponent at some point during the game.
While it was rugged on the field, Off-field, Polly's ever-growing profile saw him move from the workshop into the showroom.
He used to have a football and he'd practice in his lunch hours with the window of a car down and seeing whether he could slot the football through the window of a car, which he could do quite regularly. So he just had that desire to want to be the best.
1961 marked a turning point. In 9 spectacular seasons with East Perth, he'd consistently been their best player. 176 games, 6 grand finals, 3 premierships, 7-time Ferriston best, 3 Sandover medals and 3 Simpson medals. It was time to move his young family eastward. But he needed a club that would make it worth his while.
I'd like to get with a club that is not in the 4, and yet it has a chance of getting into the 4. I'd like to get with a club that I think I could be of use to, rather than be with a club that's been on top.
The biggest name in football in the early 60s was Polly Farmer, and his arrival at Geelong sent shockwaves through the club.
I went into the rooms after the first practice match that he played here, and it's a very difficult thing because everyone knew he was going to be a very highly priced fellow. He's the first fella really to get huge money in that. And I went around to nearly all my players and I said, how'd you get on with Polly? Oh, he gave me 6 handballs. Oh, he got this ball out to me. Oh, he's fantastic. He was in. The team had been revitalised.
Graham Farmer came over here and then suddenly we've got all these people turning up watching us at training. And on a Tuesday night we'd get 10,000 people, I'd say 8 to 10,000. Then on Thursday night it'd be 15,000 here because they were watching him.
I was playing well over there in the practice matches.
But I did something that I shouldn't have done. In the first game against Carlton, I decided I'd just take it easy.
And I'll just play my way into the game, and so which meant that I was playing in front of the others. And I got knocked over in a ruck melee, and when they landed on my knee was completely dislocated.
It was in terrible pain. But I continued to play, because I didn't, you sort of don't want to let people down.
On only one leg, Polly still managed 5 goals, helping Geelong to a famous victory.
I didn't know anything about knee injuries in those days. I needed a doctor to show me what a cartilage was and tell me that it was senseless trying to do anything. I played 5 times and I think I was carried off the ground 3 times.
It was a crushing blow. He damaged his favourite left leg. In 9 seasons with East Perth, he had avoided serious injury. Now, he faces the prospect of a knee operation and months in rehab.
After doing my leg in, I unfortunately had to change my style. I became more of a tougher ruckman, a ruckman who was prepared to take up the front position and hold my ground.
He had rebuilt his leg and once again reinvented his rucking style.
Tries one out for Farmer. Farmer's on the half-back flank. Look at that mighty hand pass over.
I was hand passing them and forcing them to run in the right direction with my hand pass. It was a matter of them having confidence in my ability to give them the ball if they're running flat out.
And the man most likely to be on the end of the hand pass was champion rover Billy Goggin.
Roaming to Polly Farmer you'd think would be fairly easy. Well, nothing's ever easy if you want to be good in life.
Farmer takes the ball out of the air, retrieves it, handballs it wide to...
We developed an understanding. It's probably a major factor in us doing so well.
The nation's most exciting sporting classics, the Australian Football Grand Final between Hawthorn and Geelong.
All the hard work paid off for Polly. In one of the closest seasons ever, Geelong made it to the grand final against arch-enemy Hawthorn.
Wooler burst through, leading his confident band, who are too strong for the Hawks in the semi-finals. Can they prove so again? It's a clash full of thrilling possibilities. Umpire Jeff Crouch bounces off and the battle is on.
63, seen him become the best player in the league by a mile.
Graham Donaldson's good football. Up they go. Farmer gets a tap down. Oh, goes to Goggin. Beautiful.
He was the master. He was the template of what ruck play was all about. We saw Farmer at his best in 63.
Farmer sends Goggin away and Hawthorn are floundering in the wake of one of Geelong's finest displays of teamwork.
We won the 63 Premiership because of him, there's no doubt about that.
Yes, I don't like playing in a Premiership side of the Victorian League. Well, it hasn't really hit us yet, I don't think, has it, Paul? No, we'll start to feel the effects later on in the week. We can't believe it at the moment.
With victory, Polly's reinvention was complete. His consummate rucking style and incredible handball had ushered in the modern play-on style of game.
Farmer's on the half-back flank. Look at that mighty hand pass.
I haven't seen a better player anywhere and have so much influence on a game as Graham Polly Farmer.
In 1965, Geelong recognised Farmer's leadership, making him club captain. 2 years later, almost 110,000 fans packed the MCG to watch Polly lead his side into the grand final. It was his 101st game for Geelong, but it would be his last for the Mighty Cats. As minor premiers, Geelong were red-hot favourites, but they were up against a Richmond side bristling with talent. Despite some Rolls-Royce football from Geelong,
Farmer from behind, he's got it.
the game was still on a knife edge deep in the final quarter when, for Geelong fans, one decision turned the game.
It would be this mark, taken by Tigers skipper Swift, that infuriated Cats fans. Was he over the line? The umpire was right on the spot and said no. Richmond would win by 9 points.
The loss triggered his final days at Geelong.
I guess I've watched it 100 times, and each time that I watched it, it gets even worse. It gets worse.
But 1967 proved a victory on a much bigger scale. At the national referendum, 90% of white Australians voted yes, recognising Aboriginal people as citizens. The original inhabitants were given equal rights for the very first time. Graham Polly Farmer, captain of the Geelong Football Club, was officially recognised as an Australian citizen.
Whilst in 1967 there may have been 40,000 Australians sitting around the MCG supporting him, up until that point Aboriginal people weren't even considered to be included in the census.
But the politics of the day wasn't on the radar of the man with the one-track mind.
I know that he did talk about it in later years, but at the time, the football overshadowed everything else.
After a grand final loss, Polly and his family moved back to WA. His play-on style had revolutionised football in Victoria and changed the game forever. Back in the West, Polly took on the tough role of captain-coach at struggling West Perth.
And Bill Dempsey, the long arms of Bill Dempsey.
A club that had only appeared once in the finals in 7 previous attempts.
Polly was a tough man. He hated losing, and he brought a toughness to our team.
So he just taught us about, if you really want something, you've got to go and get it. And to get it, there's no easy way but to work hard.
He had this persona, he's very quiet, but he doesn't have to say a lot. Charles Bronson, who used to be on the movies as my great hero, he didn't say a lot, but he delivered a lot off the scene.
When Polly had his first training run, Bill de Grucci said to Polly, "Well, Paul, after all the circle work and that, how do you want me to run them? I want you to run them till they spew. The ones that stop for a spew, I will take note, and the runs that people can run and spew at the same time, they're going to be all right."
Despite this tough regime, there was no miracle in his first season as captain-coach. But the following year saw West Perth become minor premiers and face bitter rivals East Perth in the grand final.
Not only could he play football, but he had a brain. The talk he gave on a Thursday night at a players' tea was unbelievable. I mean, I myself felt like running through the bloody brick wall.
Polly wanted to win. He had wonderful skills and he could control the outcome by his skills. But if he felt that to win he had to do something, without making a big song and dance, he'd do it.
If we're playing against, two good ruckmen and we can't get on top of them, what we do, we tell our rovers and centre people, we're going to go through the motions, but we're not going to touch the ball, so you rove to them. So we go through the motions and their ruckmen get the tap, bang, who's there? A West Perth player picking it up and clearing off with it. He was architect of 2 premierships in 4 years at West Perth because of the way he coached and the way he believed in us.
And I'd say there's the siren, and West Perth are premiers for 1971.
It was such an absolute pleasure to be part of that team that he coached.
There it is, greatly held high. Have a look at it. Graham Farmer, certainly one of his greatest moments in league football.
I think when the football career stopped, he did go on to appreciate what had happened back then and understand his place in Sister Kate. The most intensive intervention that the West Australian government had done towards assimilating, separating Aboriginal people.
His feelings about Aboriginal issues came bubbling to the surface when he was asked to speak at a local prison.
There was a room full of Aboriginal men from desert, the Kimberley, everywhere, expecting to hear Dad talk about football, and those were the days. Instead, he spoke for about 15 minutes about the injustices of what Aboriginal people have had to put up with, and that there was no wonder that they were all sitting there in prison. And then he got a standing ovation and lots of hollering, and I think lots of security were encouraged to come into the room and settle things down. But it really was an amazing time, and I was so proud of him. On the way back, I put on Johnny Cash's St Quentin's tape, thinking that, you know, Dad had rocked the prison. Yeah.
In 1994, the Farmer family established the Graham Polly Farmer Foundation, providing direct support to Indigenous students under the banner Make Your Mark. And then, after a lifetime committed to a game he loved, something extraordinary happened.
Got a call from Mum to say, they're going to name a road after Dad. And I said, is it going to be a cul-de-sac? And then that was all really I heard about this road named after Dad. I thought it might have been in Leederville, one of those back roads. It seemed to be a bigger road than we anticipated.
It is now my great pleasure to officially open the Graham Farmer Freeway.
Thousands turned out to witness the opening of WA's biggest ever road construction project.
He never really stopped to go, wow. He just took it in his stride. It's ironic that they named the tunnel after Dad, with that intense tunnel vision that he had.
Whether it was by accident or great planning, the freeway, named after Polly, crosses over some of the most culturally significant land of the Noongar Nation.
East Perth was a profound place for Aboriginal people before the Europeans arrived. And it then became a place where Aboriginal people did come back together. Over to West Perth, Lake Munga, an amazing site for Aboriginal people. It was an honour, and I hope that Noongar people sort of share our pride in the tunnel being named after him.
In 2016, at 82 years of age, a very frail Polly, suffering from advanced old age and dementia, received his lifetime award from the Geelong Football Club.
Paul, on behalf of the Geelong Football Club, just want to give you your Legends Medal. One of the greatest players that we've ever had, and that's for sure. I'll pop this around your neck. There it is there. Congratulations, Paul. You're a true champion.
I don't know where he would have been without the football. He was able to walk down the street and not only hold his head up high, but have people come up and want to shake his hands. He probably would have got the opposite.
In changing the game to suit himself, Polly became a hero, paving the way for many more great Indigenous players, freeing them to play their brand of football on the biggest sporting stage in the land.
He was before his time. He would have been a multi-millionaire.
Graham Farmer coming off the ground, and certainly a very happy man at this moment. achieved practically every ambition, I think.
To us, the players, he was a great person. We really loved him. And when people speak to me about Polly, suddenly your thoughts come flooding back, and he was such a great time in our life.